Hello. There we go. Hello, Bernard. I assume I'm saying that correctly. It's not Bernard. Bernard. Are those different names or are they different pronunciations? Anyway, hello. Got my my Laravel cup, my Laravel hat for the occasion. Sorry, I should really move away from the microphone when I drink. That must not be a nice noise. So yeah, hello all. This is going to be different from my last stream, where my last stream I was building something pure, so something just using base PHP with no packages or frameworks. Whereas in this stream, I'm going to be working on an alternative to Eloquent. It's something I built quite a while ago, actually. This is just a revival of it. It's going to function very. It's going to be similar to Eloquent. The aim is to still have a lot of the benefits of Eloquent, and to still combine that usability, but use the data mapper pattern instead of the active record. I'm going to be using this big chunker of a book, Patterns of Enterprise Application Architecture, which if you're interested in design patterns, I would recommend getting. I'm going to be using a number of different design patterns that are covered in this book. In fact, let me just show you the README for the project. And naturally, OBS has completely forgot what all of my windows are. There we go. So, I don't... Are you able to create Docker setup on Laravel as future stream footage? What is the book title? Oh, sorry. I'll start from the bottom up. Sorry, there's like a 13-second delay on chat, so you have to be through that. The book is Patterns of Enterprise Application Architecture. It's written by Martin Fowler. It's sort of considered the Bible of design patterns. If you ever do a computer science course at a university, they'll use this. There's a couple of others actually. Give me 1 second. If you're interested in design patterns, you have an interest, there's a whole bunch. There's Code Complete. It's a pretty good book, got some interesting ones in there. None of these are PHP specific. They are Java or Clojure or C#. You've got this one as well, which is widely considered an awesome book. Design Patterns, Elements of Reusable Object-Oriented Software. And then Agile Software Development, which includes a whole bunch of patterns and useful bits. You don't have to have the book. I actually own the book as a Kindle version as well, so I can do this. And OBS has forgot what my browser is. Give me a second. There we go. So I actually have it as a Kindle version. I assume I'm allowed to show this. I'm not really giving the book away for free, but so we'll be able to reference this. Right, let's go back. Will this be Laravel only, or can be used outside Laravel in a custom-built PHP framework? That is a good question. This will be Laravel specific. However, as you may be familiar, I am building something called Simple SMPL, an entire component-based framework, which will have its own data mapper ORM and will use a lot of bits in a similar way to this. Oh, excuse me. It will be quite similar, except I'll be using PHP 8.1. This will be PHP 8, and I am limited by what Laravel lets you do. So I have to keep in line with some of the conventions of Laravel and that way of doing it. Laravel, the current version, Laravel 8 is PHP 7.3 and PHP 8. I suppose it supports PHP 8.1, but I'm focusing specifically on 8 for this, whereas the one for my own components will be 8.1. Question: Docker setup on Laravel as a future stream, please? Possibly. I could create a video on that in the future, though, to be honest, if you install Laravel Sail, sorted. There's no real issue. I sometimes customize Sail using traffic to have custom host names, but to be honest, the Laravel Sail will do you a treat if you want a Docker setup for Laravel. It's not without its issues, but I think that's more Docker than Sail. But yes, so I'm going to be building from scratch a data mapper ORM for Laravel. On the screen now there is the definition of a data mapper according to Patterns of Enterprise Application Architecture. I completely appreciate that some of this might not make sense. To be honest, it's an amazing book, but you have to reread things several times for it to click. It can get quite lost. The idea is simply that it's more of a disconnect between the in-memory representation of data and the actual database. So if we take a look at Eloquent that uses active record, you have an Eloquent model, let's say user, and this user represents the database table. It has the structure of the database table, it has the structure of the relationships and the columns and how they relate to each other, and then when you pull a row from the database, it contains the data from that row, so it represents the row and the table. That's alright and it works, but there's a level of separation that you don't get with active record. So you can use what can you use? You can use lazy loading, but Laravel's or Eloquent's lazy loading is a bit messy. It means that you can have in the HTTP layer or the view layer or the presentation layer, you're able to do database queries, which is not nice. It means that the Eloquent model you're dragging around is essentially a God object. Possibly, yes. I know I've spoken about books before on Twitter, and I think we spoke about framework as well. In fact, hold on one second. Let me switch to my IDE, which I believe is this button. Yes. So, just a quick one. This is the README. This is available on GitHub, olicode/articulate, which I've pushed the code up for so far. Which there is literally nothing. There is a blank service provider. It's all going to be started. And the idea is I'm going to build this through multiple streams because there are some parts that I still need to familiarize myself with. So, for example, here are some patterns that we're going to be using. Don't worry if some of them don't mean anything to you. That's fine. I'll be honest, some of them I'm not entirely familiar with myself. This is part learning experience for me as well. You'll also find that some of these you'll actually be familiar with. You just won't know the name for. It's the wonders of design patterns. What I was going to show you is if I open up the model, it's a pretty big class, ignoring the fact that I have a lot of line spacing and large text for streaming. Like there's a lot here. This is just the base model. This doesn't include all of these. So here you go. This is the full hierarchy of an Eloquent model. All properties, constants, and methods inherited and not. Well, inherited and sort of first party. As you can see, there is a lot. This, for all intents and purposes, is a God object, which is not good. Now, don't get me wrong, Eloquent's good. I use Eloquent in almost all projects on a day-to-day basis. I use Eloquent. In fact, I have a whole bunch of scripts that I'm trying to figure out what to do with. I'm probably going to do a sort of standalone course on an extreme deep dive into Eloquent, explaining exactly how each individual part of it works, all of its features, how it functions, some of its gotchas that are hidden in there that will catch you out, things like that. But I like the data mapper pattern. The data mapper pattern is a personal favourite of mine because I'm very into structure. I'm very into separation. I'm very into clearly defined things. And this allows you to do that because you have an entity and then a mapper. The mapper itself speaks to the database. It gets the data from wherever it needs to get it, and then it puts it into the entity. Now, the entity contains the data, but the entity knows nothing of the database, doesn't know where the data's come from. It's a data agnostic solution. One of the things I might do with this, if I get time, is to support non-database stuff, like files, for example. It wouldn't be too difficult to do, and that's the benefit of the data mapper pattern. This is, I suppose, an experimental thing. I will release it when it's ready, but it's mostly built because I thought it would be a fun topic. I quite like it. And there's not much out there on ORMs. There's not much on sort of building one. You can find videos and streams of building anything really if you look hard enough. But the aim with this is to be a bit different. But what I will be doing is I will be using the user as a basic to build things around. So Couchbase, that's interesting. So Laravel has a default user model. A lot of you will be familiar with. I don't mean the user model that comes when you create a project from Laravel. I mean the class that it extends, which is user. And in here it has the authenticatable, authorizable, those are the traits, the authenticatable contract, the authorizable contract, and the can reset password contract. What I'm going to do is I'm going to essentially create a basic entity and use that as the sort of the test. So to actually do that, I'm going to create it, not in vendor. I'm going to create a fixtures directory in tests, and then in there I'm going to create a user. I'm going to assume that that is a link that we don't want there, so just going to remove that. Always fun. Right, so this is going to be the user. Now, if I remember correctly, which I don't think I am, I'm going to go to GitHub, to Laravel's sort of scaffolding. We need a database, migrations, create users table. So let's have a look. What does a user have? So a user has an ID. So let's assume this is going to be an integer. It has a name. It has an email address. It has a timestamp. Oh, that's interesting. So timestamp can be carbon, email, verified at, but it's a nullable. So let's set its default value to null. What else have we got? We've got a password. We've got a remember token, which is called remember token. Memory serves. So it's going to bring up my test one, isn't it? So you remember token, yes, okay. And then it has timestamps. So let's these will don't always have a value until they're persisted, do they? Okay, not quite sure what to do with that. Okay, so let's set those to null for now, since they're not going to be set before it's been created. Okay, so this is an entity. This is going to serve as, I have also just realized that I forgot to switch back to my IDE while I wrote that, but that's fine. So this is a problem with so many screens, keeping an eye on which one's the code that I want to display. So this is the user entity. I'm going to use it for the purpose of testing, not just unit testing, also just sort of running the code as I go through to make sure it functions. But this is going to be an articulate version of the Eloquent model that you get, that comes with it by default, as this is a user entity rather than a user model. It's going to be very similar to a simple plain old PHP object, so a popo. The first thing that I need to do, or at least the first thing that I'm going to choose to do, is to map the metadata. So what this means is, if you switch back to the browser, you have in Eloquent or in Laravel the migrations. You have a blueprint class. There we go. You have the blueprint class, which is injected into the migration, which lets you build up the structure of the database table. You then, in an Eloquent model, have the fillable, the guarded, the casts, the timestamps, the primary key, key type. There's a whole bunch of properties that allow you to set up the metadata for the model. Fillable lets you set them as assignable, but then you have casts that let you set the types. One of the things we can do with straight old PHP objects like this is we know what type it's going to be, because we know that an ID is an integer, name is a string, email is a string, email verified at is a null or carbon instance. So we can infer from the properties the type. You can use this as well to generate the database migration later on. So we need a way to provide the metadata. The simplest way to do it, or not the simplest way to do it, the nicest way to do it is to use PHP attributes. So let's say this is an entity, so we add the attribute entity, and the table name is users. This is going to error because these don't exist. This is a primary key, so we'd add the primary key attribute, and then we'd add the column attribute. Here we could add column, 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 column. And then we'd have something that's responsible for mapping all of this. So what I'm actually going to go through is I'm going to go through and initially create a Fluent interface similar to Laravel's blueprint. And the idea is, if you don't want to use attributes, you can create something like a migration that defines the metadata for the entity. Now here I have added the column attribute with no values, simply because what I will do with this is I will have the internal mechanism understand that if the column isn't given arguments, it can infer the argument. So we know what the type is, so we know that it's going to be a string, which will be a varchar. We know that it's going to be called name. Since there's no column name provided, we can assume that the column name in the database will also be name, as well as this attribute name. There will be an element here, so what I will do initially is I will set something like an option to change this, but a default value that will tell it that when generating a column name from an attribute, to turn it from camel case or headless camel case to a snake case. So the column becomes email underscore verified at, all lowercase. But initially, before adding the additional complexity of using reflection and things like that, I'm going to add the metadata mapper. So if I go to my source directory, let's start with contracts, which is going to be the interfaces. So the first one I'm going to create, let's have a look. Let's create the metadata interface. So this will be the object that holds the metadata for a given entity. So get entity class. That's going to be, so in this instance, this would return user class. Let's add a dot block here. So this is actually going to return a class string. Let's use some magic, some dot block generics. So let's call this E of object. So this is going to be class string E. There we go. The fully qualified name of the entity class. There we go. So next we're gonna need to get the attributes. We'll get the entity class. That's going to be the class name. We have the... Oh, this is difficult. See, this is going to be a thing. I'm going to sort of make this up as I go along because I like this. It's a bit more fun than than sort of having it all planned out nicely. So the base implementation here, or the base interface, you get the entity class, so in this instance would be user class. Next, it's going to need the attributes, but it's also going to need this. So this attribute here. Don't want to do it in such a way that's like get table name. That's crap, if I'm honest, because that means that should I want to support anything that doesn't use the concept of a table, maybe MongoDB, which uses collections, maybe it's reading array data, maybe it's talking to an API. So in theory, this could work with an API. Actually, the original version of Articulate that I built fully worked with an API. It could treat APIs as sort of data collections. It was an ORM just for data sets, not specifically database. So I don't want table name. It gets difficult. You have to pick a name, and I don't want them to be... Let's go. Let's just call it name. So there's the class name, and then there's the name. I'll leave it as that for now. So we need to sort of get this. But do we want a method that just gets the name, or that gets this instance? Because then this becomes a sort of wrapper instance. Always a tough one. Naming things is always very difficult. Exactly, Ben. I'm just going to go with name now because it's generic. I can look in the future and come up with a better name. Like I want to say collection, but the problem is something else uses collection. So I'll just leave it with name now. But I don't think I want a method to specifically... So we've got get entity class, so that would be user class, and then we're going to want the attributes. So actually, let's get the attributes and let's get them as an array. And then let's create the attribute interface. Return attributes. An array of entity attributes. So this will return an array of the attribute contract. I don't know what I did then, everything broke. So this will represent each individual attribute, which actually means I'll probably change this from column to attribute to make it more generic. So I don't know, I'm hot jumping here. This is sort of, you go and you end up several layers deep. So the metadata needs to get the entity class and it needs to get the attributes. So I need to come up with the structure of an attribute. So we have protected int ID. So first is going to be type. Get type. Let's keep this as string for now. Yeah. So for ID, this would return int. For name, string. Email verified at would return carbon or null. So let's. So this is an attribute nullable. Has default value. Get default value. So the reason I have a has default value and a get default value here is that if I just have get default value and there is no default value, I will return null, because I can't have a void and something else method, so that it would default to return null, which would assume that the default value would be null, which means I'd have to do checks. So get default value, is default value null? Okay. Is nullable? No. Okay, don't use that. So I'll just have a has default value, that lets me wrap it all. I can just do, if it has a default value, there you go, bang. Otherwise, just skip that whole chunk of code and go straight to complaining that it doesn't have a value. So this is going to represent each individual attribute. I think that will do for now. Yeah, so actually what we're going to want is get name, which will be the attribute name, and then get column name, which would typically be the if you have a different name in the attribute to a different name in the database, which happens. The benefit of the data mapper pattern is that it doesn't have to match one-to-one, so you can actually be a bit more specific. Not a bit more specific. You can differ. You can change the database all you like, and as long as you set the code up to work correctly, you don't have to go around modifying entities, which is fine. So I think get name, get column name is nullable. I'm pretty sure that's all that I need. I don't even need this duck block for now, so I'll remove that because it's just making things seem complicated. So that will do for an attribute definition. Now I'm going to look at this type. So here I'm just returning string, which is crap. Don't want to return a string. I is unique, but attributes is not supposed to. That's a very good question. So I think that would be outside of the base. So the idea here is that an attribute, this just represents, hello Steve, this just represents, say, here we go. In fact, do you know what? Let's actually create, this is gonna be really confusing. Let's create the articulate attribute, PHP 8 attribute, using the interface attribute. That is an interesting. So this is going to be parameter only for now. Simplify that. Oh no. Okay, so replace with alias. You can be contract. You can't be attribute. It's very messy. So let's have constructor. What should we have? Constructor string. Oh, string type. String name. String column. In fact, you. Okay, so name first, and then type is going to be null, and then column name is also going to be null. Nullable, we'll assume false, and then default value we'll assume null, and then actually I'm going to have to pass in a boolean value. Has default value, assume false. So first of all, let's break these just onto new lines just so it's easy to actually read. Yeah, that is confusing, except the problem is the terminology for this is somewhat already defined. Let's have a look. So just collection of inheritance when you build an object model with a lot of business logic. I'm going to scan this and try to find mention of the columns. Oh, is it going to search the whole book? My God, that's going to take forever. The references for the word column in the entire Patterns of Enterprise application architecture. Mapping data to domain fields. Mappers need access to the fields and the domain objects. Often this can be a problem because you need public methods to support the mappers you don't want for domain logic. There's no easy answer. You could use a lower level, or you can use public methods but guard them with a status. Okay, right, fields. Good prompt there, Ben. So this, you are a field. Okay. That's weird that it changed the implementation name. Why are you complaining? Right, give me 1 second. I absolutely, categorically despise this crap. I don't want those polyfills because it always makes everything be angry with stuff. But there we go. So there's a field. The field has a name, a type, column name, nullable, has default value. Let's initialize all of these properties. I am not using property promotion. Property promotion from the constructor because, simply put, I do not like how it looks. Boom, boom. I think it looks terrible. Makes the code ugly. Return default. Well, oh no, we want has default value. That keeps it actually. It's nice and simple to call them fields because they are essentially fields, or at least if you use PHP Storm, it marks them as a field. So that works. Okay, so here is the attribute. So I can go back to user. Let's delete all of these for now. So when you reflect on an attribute, as in a PHP attribute, there is a method called new instance that creates a new instance of it, which is not what I'm going to use for these, which is going to be a bit shitty. Why are you? It's weird. Weird that it would complain at me for that. So I'm actually going to set name to null. But you're not going to be. No, you've got to be nullable, haven't you? So this is where things fall down a bit. So I might have to think of a slightly different way to do this. So these are all nullable, but in reality they won't be nullable. They're only nullable simply because you don't want to have to do id int column name id as default value false, nullable false. Like, you don't want to have to do this. Why are you shouting at me? Oh, parameter. Why did nobody point that out? It's a property, not parameter. That's what you get for just... That's why... that'll be why this didn't suggest it to me as well when I was trying to enter it. So let's get rid of that. So this is a field. This is its name. This is its type. This is its column name. You don't want to do this. This is, for want of a better term, shit. This can already be implied. Like, you can get all of this from this property. So you should just be able to do field and then bang. Which is why, unfortunately, all of these have to be nullable. But I will come back to that later. So, right, this method needs to be renamed as well, doesn't it? So I don't know why I'm doing that because it's not used anywhere. So it's called, oh god, it's called get fields, get an array of entity fields. And then we have field here, type. Right. What I was going to do before I got really distracted then is I'm going to address this type here. I do not like that it is a string. That is messy and that is horrible. So I'm going to add a field type interface. Now this is going to be very similar to Laravel's castable. Is it you? No. What's the other one? Not castable. Cast attributes? Is it cast attributes? Yes. Boom. So it's going to be like this, basically. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So, very similar principle to this. We'll have a get method, except this is going to be an entity. This is going to be the field name. And then we're going to have field value. And then we're going to have an array of raw fields. So, we'll just call it fields for now, simply because there's no way to know exactly what that's going to be. So that will probably be iterative. So same concept here. Field name, mixed field value, an array fields. In fact, let's simplify this because that's messy. You can imply that it's the field name and field value because you're on the field type and you're in the get and set methods. So cast attribute. So it's going to be very similar to this. Transform the attribute to its underlying model values. Yeah, that sounds about right. Which means you are now going to return field type. It is probably going to start shouting because this is the wrong type, but that's fine. I can live with that. So I'm going to have one of these for everything, for all of the primitive values. Set. Oh, do you know what? Don't think I like the names get and set. Is this actually used anywhere? We don't want comments, we want implements. Okay. So get is value for display. So this actually just returns. Do we want that? I don't want that, do I? I don't want it to just be get and set. That's boring. Let's have cast and pass because they sound much more fun. Cast a field value. Cast a value from the persistent storage for an entity field. One day I'll remember how to spell persistent. Pass an entity field value for the persistent storage. There we go. That should cover it. Okay, so let's create some types. We'll do string field. No, this is actually going to be a class. And it is going to implement field type. Actually, let's just call it string type. Boom. Clean that up. Boom, 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 boom. So cast is going to be quite simple. It is quite literally going to be string value. This is return string value, and you can be string, and you can be string because of, oh god damn it, what is it, what am I looking for? Oh god, I've written an entire video on this and I can't believe I've just completely forgot. Liskov substitution principle, what is it? Basically, if you weren't aware, in PHP, you can change the return type of a method to be more specific than the parent method. So if you're extending a class or implementing an interface, your method can return something more specific. If you are doing the same thing but with a parameter, so here it has to be more specific. It has to be less specific, sorry. So here I can change mix to string because that's more specific, but here if I change this to that because that's not actually a type, if I change it to string, it's going to shout at me because it has to be compatible. It ruins the compatibility, the Liskov substitution principle. Oh, what is it called? Boom, 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 boom. I cannot believe, you'll have to give me 1 second because that is going to drive me mad. I need to find my notes. I literally have it written down because I wrote a video on it. As part of PHP Explained. Covariance and Contravariance. That's the one. Let me just remind myself of the specific order. So covariance allows a child's method to return a more specific type. So this is making use of covariance, whereas contravariance is the other way. Means that it has to be less specific, which is annoying, which means I can't really change this value from mixed. It means that if I remove the type from the parent, I can't add one in the child because that becomes less specific. So here's a string type. Let's do an int type. Super easy. Int. Like you sort of get the idea. These are the sort of primitive values here. It's sort of the primitive types, string and int. That tells it how to do it. You might wonder why you need these. That's because there are sometimes going to be cases where, particularly with strings, where the actual value in the database, the value in the field is not actually a string. So we have the Stringable Interface as of PHP 8, which means that we can treat objects like strings. We can essentially pass them in as values or parameters or properties or anything with a type that is set to string, and it will call this and it will use the string representation. However, we don't have it for anything else like int, or just do some reformatting there. It only works for string. So here we have the cast and the pass, and the idea is you'd create a custom value and a custom field type for custom types that you have. So let's create a more complex one. Let's call this carbon type. Do I want to call it carbon? I don't want to call it timestamp. I'll keep it called carbon, because even though it's a timestamp, this means that this is specific to the carbon implementation. So if at any point you wanted to not use carbon, don't know why, you could not. So there we go. So this is where things get interesting. So this is going to actually require additional arguments. So we're going to need format. And in fact, you know what? Let's steal Eloquent's default date format. Where are you? I cannot remember the name. Date format. I'm sure there's a default date format in here. There we go. I knew it was somewhere. Let's set the default value to be the same as Eloquent. Again, no property promotion because that's horrible. So what we're going to do is going to return carbon. Ooh, create from format, this format, and then value. Boom. And then here. Ooh, now this is interesting. Return carbon format. No, is it? Oh, what are the carbon to? Gonna regret doing this. W3C. It's not on here. Format? Have they changed the name of these methods? What's the method to get carbon as a string? It's not there. Why is it not there? Right. This is an issue. I'm not imagining. See, it has these here. Whatever. So let's. Oh wait, I'm an idiot. It's not a static method. In fact, let's just. If value is not an instance of carbon interface, then we'll just return value. Else, and now the IDE should know. There we go. Format this format. Boom. So now we have a carbon field type. So in theory, we should be able to. Are you watching this from downstairs? Are you using up the valuable bandwidth of me streaming by sitting like there? Just like 6 foot below me. Yeah. So we have a carbon field type. That's my fiance, by the way, if anyone's curious. She's downstairs. Watching trashy TV. Yes, so this is the idea with field types. This very similar to the casts attribute that you find in Eloquent and you find in Laravel. Its job is to cast and pass for the persisted data storage and then for the entity itself. There's going to be a new instance of each one. In theory, there doesn't have to be. For carbon, there will be. There will almost definitely be an instance for this, whereas strings, the string type, hold up a Z there, the string type, you won't really need one. So what I can do is, let's go into types and let's create primitive type. And primitive type, I'm not going to add it there. Implements field type. You are abstract. You have a private static instance, and then you have a get instance method which returns static. If self instance of self, then new static return self instance. So there you go. So I've created a primitive type as I didn't do that on purpose. This is legitimately watching crap on BBC iPlayer last time I went downstairs. I've created a base abstract class primitive type that is going to be a singleton. And then I can get rid of this here and I can extend primitive type. And then I can do the same for int type. Extends primitive type and then add that missing bit in there. So now this is, I just need to check something because I cannot for the life of me remember if you can use statements or if it's just new. Why did you not update that? That's rather annoying. Oh, that's because that's not the right place to do that. Did I just change the name to be field type? I did. Why would I do that? What a rather silly thing to do. Okay. So, if I go back to my user, I should be able to do type. Now, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this. I knew I wouldn't be allowed to do this. God damn it. Constant expression contains invalid operations. The only thing that I could do is here. I could do field type. Oh, wait. Is this PHP 8.1? Oh, this might be... Yeah, it's 8.1. God damn it. Hold on. What happens if I change to 8.1? Okay, so you let me do that. Are you gonna let me do this? No, you're still not gonna let me do this. You still can't... Yeah, still can't call methods. Well, that's shit. Well... what is the best way around that? That's an interesting problem. So I can't pass an instance. I suppose I don't need to actually, do I? Oh, in it. Right. Okay. Let's go back a tiny little bit. We'll take a couple... Just rewind. And we'll go back and we'll get rid of you. And so, we have an entity that has fields, and the fields have types. This is a field type. Okay. Let's add primitive field type as an interface that implements field type. Boom, done. Right, so primitive field type. And primitive field type requires, must be static. Must it? Mustn't it? No, actually, that's complicating things, isn't it? So we'll get rid of that because that's also in the wrong place. And we will add in field type, all field types must have a make method that returns an instance of itself. Create a new instance of this field type. Oh no, actually, no. Retrieve an instance of this field type. So the carbon one. So if I go to carbon type, it's going to shout because I don't have this method, which I can add. And I can do method static carbon type make string format. Now you are going to complain because you are already defined in here. However, I am going to completely ignore that and just do this. It doesn't accept an array, so let's splat it. Boom, done. I've just realized I'm still set to 8.1, aren't I? So let's do that before I do something silly, and it shouts at me. Right, so I'm going to add this for, I don't know, for fun. So this make method, let's move it right up the top. Glorious. In fact, let's move it before you, because why not? Let's have it as the first thing. So you're there, you're shouting about that, but that doesn't actually matter because, oh, it does, because it's going to error. Oh, is it going to make it red? So, wait, no, you can just be, actually. You can just be this, can't you? Static get instance. Boom, done. But you're no longer pure. So remove pure. So there we go. Primitive types now work. Are you honestly gonna shout at me about this? That's gonna bug me. And you can't add additional arguments. That's very annoying, isn't it? Okay, so that's annoying. That is technically correct. So, can I create, get around this, base type, abstract class base type, implements field type. Can I move you to here? And then change you to extend base type. Sorted. That's no longer going to shout at me because I've tricked it, because I am a tricky person. So if any of you are curious, this little definition here will tell my IDE that when I call carbon type, let's just do it here. Oh, got to add a type. So if I do type carbon type make, it's gonna show me the format option. Obviously it's gonna shout at me because I can't do this in attributes, but a fake definition right at the type there, right at the top there, and because it is in here, it's gonna let me do fun things. It's going to let me create a bunch that require additional arguments, and then we'll just sort of define it as a little bit in there. Doesn't really hurt to do, does it? Okay, so I have created the concept. Oh, get rid of you. I have created the concept of a field type and a field. Nice. You need more screens so you can do more things. So I've created the concept of a field type, and then metadata. The idea being that a field is the actual property. So if I go to the user entity here, these are the fields as they would be in any sort of OOP thing. These are the fields, and fields have types. Types are very similar to Laravel's cast attributes. It casts and it passes. You have more complex ones like carbon, which take a format. And the... what is that? Oh, bookmarks. Never seen that before. Completely derailed my train of thought there. Yes, and a field has a type, a field type. Now the interesting thing is, how do I get the field type? So there's going to need to be attributes. Or should I just go with column for the attribute? And just stick with that. Keep it simple. Keep it just SQL for now. I'll tell you what. Let's create in here a... what should we call it? Let's call it a field manager. And the field manager keeps track of the types. There we go. So boom, boom, boom. You are a class string of field type. And then we do, if you aren't already set, then we'll want to set you. In fact, you know what? Let's let people override it. In fact, let's have override set to false, so you can pass that in. So if override or it's not set, then set this and then return this. Let's make you a Fluent method. There we go. Boom. Register a field type. There we go. So field manager. Right. So let's add a config file. What should we? Let's just call it articulate. And yeah, why not? Let's leave you in there. Let's have types. Keep it nice and simple. String type. Ooh. Int type. Here you go. Carbon type. Oh, do you know what? Oh, this is a difficult one. Let's add... Sorry, I realised I didn't actually say out loud what I was doing then. Let's add aliases. And let's have the carbon class alias to date time and carbon interface. Right, okay, so field manager, you're already set up. So actually, let's go to the service provider. Let's go to register, which is going to be a void method that's present in all Laravel service providers. And let's have register field types, which is a method that I will create here. Field types equals config articulate types default array. And then Let's have type aliases is going to be articulate aliases, and we'll do each field types as name, class. Actually, let's do this register field manager. This field manager equals new field manager. Actually, this app singleton field manager, because we don't need to tell you how to create it because you have no arguments. So we will do manager equals this app make field manager. So we'll get an instance of the field manager and we'll loop through all of the types from the config, and then we will register. Oh, that's interesting. You aren't very happy. Why are you not very happy? Because I don't have the IDE helper. So that's annoying. We'll just put that there. Then you are, register name class false. So we don't want to override at this point. Then once we've done that, we will actually do aliases equal type aliases name or empty, and then we'll do for each aliases as alias, and then we'll do manager register alias class false. So what this will do is, let's pass in all of that in, is this will load the aliases from the config, which is here. It will, this is sort of name to type, and then it will load the aliases for each of those. So carbon is now date time and carbon interface. So if there is any type for these, it will use sort of this mapping here. So I don't actually need to provide these values because they are redundant. But I do need. Let's have a look. It has been so long since I've done this. I need to go to here, and then it's, what is it? Digging deeper, package development, configuration. It is the boot method, which okay, that's quite annoying. So that means the config has to be loaded. So I guess I will do this in the boot method. And we'll do config path articulate. Boom. Let's put this in its own method. This publish config. Boom. I don't know why you put it up there. So the register field manager, and then we'll put this here. So that gives everything with it. That gives everything within the register cycle of the application. Gives it time to register any fields it wants with the field manager. And then in the boot method, it publishes the configuration, and then it registers the field types. And it's going to register the field types from the config. You are spelt incorrectly. Boom. Yeah, I do keep forgetting to do that. The problem is, my code is here in the middle of this monitor. The browser is here, and then the console is here. So it's this screen is split into thirds with console, and then IDE, and then browser. Except the screen, I've got a second screen up here, up at the top, that has OBS Live on it. So when you see me look up, I'm looking OBS Live to check it. The webcam is between the two monitors here. So because the browser is dark and my IDE is using a dark theme, I just see out the corner of my eye. I'm like, okay, those colors look right. I did it with GitHub earlier because I could see dark with highlighted code at the corner of my eye. But yeah, hopefully I'll remember to do that. This is actually my second stream, so at least we haven't dropped out. I think by this point last time I was getting 98% package drop for some utterly bizarre reason. Okay, so here we have a field manager. The field manager is responsible for exactly what you'd imagine it's responsible for. Actually, that's not true. It's responsible for managing the field types, not the field managers. So it probably does need a method. To get a type using its name and then an array of parameters. And let's actually, we can just do, since the field manager is just managing this stuff, we can just do has string name, return is set this type's name. Boom, done. And you are a Boolean. So if this actually, let's just return null for now. Else class equals this type's name, and then we want to do return class make, and then splat the parameters. Let's add little doc block here. So you should be a string of field type. So is this gonna, why do you not do that? So class string field type. Okay, so it's not smart enough to know that if it's a class string of field type, then it should have access to the static method. It is defined as static, but that's fine. That'll do for now. Yeah, so this field manager will let me register the different field types, which will handle the converting, and will let me retrieve an instance of said field type for the metadata. So now with this, we'll work a bit more on the metadata. So let's create a builder. Does the builder need an interface? Okay, so let's create a metadata directory. And in here we'll create metadata, and you can implement contracts. Metadata, you're going to shout at me, aren't you? Metadata, and we're going to replace you with an alias of contract and add the method stubs. And method and metadata is going to take this. Boom, no constructor property promotion because blah. And then, so the metadata class itself is going to be particularly simple. The interesting bit is going to be getting the metadata. So I'm going to create a blueprint the same way that Laravel does. So in fact, this is going to try and open that now, isn't it? Here we go. So the blueprint class lets you build up. It is a Fluent builder that's very similar to what I need, except here it's going to be, these are called column definitions. As you can see here, they've got sort of like this Fluent structure to it. You'll be familiar if you've literally ever created a migration. This won't be new to you. So I'm going to create something similar to this, in theory, to define the metadata for an entity. So let's just write Let's go in here and here. So let's do register user entity. So I'm just creating this as a pure example. So let's say we need, oh, I don't know. Blueprint is going to be new blueprint. And then we do like blueprint entity is user class, and then name is users, and then I do fields. Maybe I am just sort of making this up as I go along. Add ID type int primary key. So something like this, maybe fields add name nullable type string, something like this, something you'd be somewhat familiar with. Like I have just completely made that up. That's none of that is valid code, but it's going to work similar to that, just like a migration. Just a user entity, boom. So a blueprint is going to first of all be created with the entity class, and the storage name is what I'm going to go with for those. And I'm going to create getters for both of these. So a blueprint is also going to have a template E of object, and get entity class is going to be class string E. So it's going to return a class string that matches. You are going to be the same. You need to be a valid class string. And then get storage name. Okay. Oh. The blueprint will be used to build it. So initially it's created with an entity class and a storage name. The next thing I'm going to need to do, I believe, is start adding fields. So let's do, you know what? Let's steal. Let's not steal. Let's borrow from Laravel's core. Let's have a look. So some of these are going to be implementation specific. So a lot of these are to do with SQL, which we're trying to sort of remove, so to speak. So we wouldn't have stored as, wouldn't have virtual as, wouldn't have stuff like that, because those are tied specifically to SQL. And we don't really want that, because that sort of bleeds the database into the actual data layer, which is not nice. Also, this is specifically modifying the column of a database, so of a database table. So we don't want anything like this. We want field definition. So let's have a look. What's a column definition? Extends Fluent. What does Fluent have? Oh, Fluent is literally, I always forget this, Fluent is literally just an array that builds it up. So do you know what? Let's use this. You know what? Let's use Fluent. Boom. Look, column definition. So we are going to add, or I'm going to add methods. Method this. Ooh, name string name. Boom. Does this support stuff like that? Does it? I can never remember. Call. Ooh, John Wick. I do like a good John Wick. If parameters are greater than 0, then use the first parameter. I'll set it to true. Ah, so you don't let us have multi-definition. That's not gonna work then, is it? Okay, scratch that. So we are doing things slightly differently to how that works anyway. So, right, a field definition. Oh, do you know what? You know what? A field definition should make use of the field interface. It absolutely should. It absolutely should make use of those. We need to be a Fluent builder. Okay. Yeah, it's gonna be a while. So, string name. You're not gonna let me initialize you, are you? Boom, boom, boom. Add property. Done. Type. This type. Return. Spelt with a Y. Better than normal return. Just got a notification. Ooh, I got an email. An irresponsible time to email me. It's 9:20. What do we got? Column name. We'll just call you column. Boom, column. Oh, no, that's not at all what I want to do. Column, return this. I have completely forgot how to type because people can see me. Okay, so boom, add you, and then we'll add you. No, you are correct. That is completely undefined because I've missed the N off the end. So what are you going to do? Yeah, we go. We'll just add static. Boom. Boom. I don't know, because you couldn't get it because the property didn't exist. So column name, nullable. So we'll do nullable equals false. Actually, why would I do that? Nullable equals true. I can be an idiot sometimes. And then your default value is actually false. And you return static. Next is with default. But okay, now let's just do default mixed default value, and then we'll do as default equals true, and then this default value. Let's call it default. Equals default value. No, let's remove the value bit from there. It's messy. And then we'll create you as a mixed property, and then we will create you with a default value of false. And we'll set you to static return type. So you just return this type for now. That is a bit of a problem, isn't it? Because it's expecting the field type. And then this as default. Return this default. Right, so you are mad, and you are rightfully mad. Let's just make you a string for now, because it can retrieve the actual field type later on. But the problem is, ooh, needs to be a field type, doesn't it? Okay. Let's change this up. I don't want to call the container in here because that would be super messy. Okay, so we'll leave it like that. Nice and simple. Actually, let's just remove these getters for now because they're in the way. Let's have field string name. This field's name equals new field definition. Name. In fact, let's return you. Your return type will be field definition. Oh, yeah, I should probably create you. Private array fields. Did I create an implementation of metadata? I did. So the blueprint is going to need a build method, which is literally going to return new metadata. This entity class, this fields. Boom. Or is it? Don't know what the noise was. So there's a little bit of a lot of elements we have to sort of sit and think. I drank all my tea. It's my thinking juice. We are actually coming up. I do have the last half hour because I was only going to do a 2-hour stream today. So to recap what's sort of been going on, I know I've been jumping about. There's been a bit of discovery. The idea is each entity needs metadata. So if I open up the user entity, somewhere, since this won't have the attribute, won't have the fillable properties, it won't have the castable, won't have the dates, won't have all of those properties that models have that define the structure of the model. The system needs a way to understand this object. This is achieved by creating metadata. The metadata represents the metadata of the class. It tells the core system how to use this class. Now, this is a tricky bit because you've got to think of the best way to create it. So I'm going with a blueprint style approach, which, as I've said before, is going to be similar to this one. So if you've ever created a migration, very similar prospect to that. That's cool. Build it into a statement. Exactly the same sort of principle. It's a thing that's passed into the closure during a database migration. Well, in the up and down methods of a database migration. I'm going to be creating something simple, and that blueprint, the idea is you build it up in the exact same way. Not only because that method works well, but because it's something people will be familiar with. And since this is going to serve as an alternative for Eloquent, it's probably best to stick to methods that people are going to be familiar with in some way or another. For the migrations, it's a good one. It also means that there's going to be ways to then build out from that. So use the metadata to generate migrations, for example, because that will have that additional information. So initially it will be the blueprint, but then I will add attributes. So you don't actually need to write the all of the implementation yourself, telling it which properties do what. You just sort of add, like, boom, done. It can be inferred that it's an integer type. Its name is ID. It can assume the column name is the same. Just sort of like all of that fun stuff. We do have, in fact, do you know what? Let's create an entity attribute. Entity attribute is going to be usable only on classes. Oh. Idiot. It was weird. So you are going to have Haskell. Ooh. You're going to take storage name is what I'm going to go with. Let's have storage name be nullable. And ooh, let's in metadata create a naming strategy. Let's just call it naming, and it's going to be, and it's not. It's not. It's not going to be an enum because I'm using PHP 8, not PHP 8.1. God damn. Okay, this does change things a bit. So public constant snake case. Let's just call it this for now because everyone loves snake case. And then camel case. Boom. Actually, yeah, whatever. And then we'll have format string and then case, and then we'll return match case. Snake case will return string. It's not, is it? You've been moved to here. Snake value. Actually, let's do self camel case equals string camel value, and then you can be default as well. No, wait, that's not how you do default, is it? Is that it? No, that's not it. How would you add? I forget you add default ones to this. Oh well, I completely forgot how to add defaults to match statements. But that's fine. We'll leave that for there. So create a super simple method here, and then as well as this, you're going to take an int, and let's do this, and let's add. Okay, so boom, boom. Let's add one of the PHP Storm expects values, and it needs to be flags from class, naming class. So now, when I use this, initialize properties, boom. Some getters for the naming and for the strategy. Should, in theory, be able to do so. Entity storage name is users. It's going to be in the table users, and the naming. There we go. So it is actually telling me values that it should be using, and it will use this value here to generate column names, but also to generate the table name if one isn't provided. So get storage name isn't going to return null. It's going to, if this storage name equals null, actually it is going to return null because this is just serving as an information class. Yeah. I'm sorry, why are you doing it like that? Weird that it formatted it like that. Okay, whatever. So, right, this is a purely informational class that I can just add here. Realistically, I don't need to add those values. They can be worked out at a later point. But that defines what an entity is. So this defines it as an entity. It means that I can have a level of automation. So without being manually registered, it can scan a directory. You can find all classes that have the entity attribute. The idea is this core configuration is going to be here. So here we've got what? Field, name, ID, type is int. It is going to be angry at me and shout about that because it's expecting a field type. No, I'm going to need to address that. I'm going to need to think of a good way to do that between streams. I should be streaming next Wednesday, hopefully. I am going to cut this just a little bit short, simply because my legs are tired and I'm not very well. And I need to sit down. I've been throwing things around in my head so far. But I've made a good start. I've started building up the metadata, which... the metadata map in here. The link is on GitHub. Yeah. So this does take you to just a brief breakdown of what it is. But as you can see here, it's just sort of mapping the entity with the persistent storage. It is the core part of the data mapper pattern. Go to you. So, oh yeah, control the chat. I need to do something about that little block. I need to make the chat a bit smaller. Do you know what? I am going to do that right now. Let's make it a bit smaller, shall we? You go there, you go there. You there. Did it just reset the whole chat? Because that would be really annoying if that is what it... Ah, there we go. That's much better. So the chat bit there does unfortunately cut it off. So that is an unfortunate side effect of... So when I use OBS, it's giving me the option to sign in to talk in this chat, but if I do that, it just crashes the whole application. So I will just not do that. So yes, this stuff is going to be on GitHub, and I've made a start on the metadata. To be honest, the topic switch for this stream was a very last minute one I had today, and I did this because I thought today was Tuesday and I wasn't streaming until tomorrow. So I didn't have much time to sit and put together. I've put down, I think, 2 lines of notes in a notebook, which is not helpful in the slightest. So I'm going to give this more thought. I'm going to get a bit more planning, and then I'm going to come back next Wednesday, and I'm going to start building this up and start actually writing some unit tests. Is that another goddamn spam bullshit? I really need to get a bot in here to sort that stuff out, because it is super annoying. Do people just have bots that just sit there and spam stuff? I think, unfortunately, for my next stream, I might set it so you can only chat if you're a subscriber, which is a bit shit. They just stop these spam bots. Or I might look at having a chat bot. I'm sure the chat bot can do something with it. Or I can just blame Steve because he's a moderator, so it's his fault. He should have moderated it while I was streaming. Yeah, so hopefully next week I'll have a bit more of a structure and I won't be figuring it out, and I'll remember to switch to my code, which is the very important bit. I'll remember to switch to the code after the browser. I should be able to get more of the metadata sorted and start looking at using attributes properly and parsing the actual classes to build up the metadata. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to go and revisit the original version of Articulate, which I know you can't see my screen just because I'm checking something. I don't even think you can see this GitHub repository because it is private. It is private, yes. So the original version, which worked with was PHP 7.1, Laravel 5.6 and 5.7. Old code from like 3 years ago. I will go through and sort of figure out the best way to do it, because there was a lot of things that I came up with then that worked, that can probably be modified now. I'm just actually looking through some of the code for it. This would be super useful. Yeah. So yeah, I have seen mention of Nightbot. I think I can add Nightbot through the Discord stream kit and also through Stream Elements, is it? I think it's Stream Elements, yeah. That's who I'm using. OBS Live as giving this. I might do that. That's going to make life a lot easier going forward. But yes, thank you for tuning in. I'm going to jump off now. Apologies that it's, as I said, it's a bit all over the place. Unfortunately, my mind is very... It jumps. There's lots of threads going on, and they're all just crossing over each other and knotted. And unfortunately, if I don't leave myself enough time to plan something out, I end up sort of mixing them. This is why it usually takes me a long period of time before I release a pre-recorded video, because I spend so long perfecting the script, because I write the script and I read it and I think it's amazing, and then I give it to somebody else and they're just like, it's a bit mad. It's sort of jumping around. So next week will be a lot more planned. Hopefully I can get time to plan it. Shit, it's Christmas at the weekend. So I probably won't, well, I won't stream before Christmas, I don't think, now. So Merry Christmas for those of you that celebrate it. If you don't celebrate it, not Merry Christmas, I guess. Enjoy your just boring weekend, I guess. Yeah, so I will be back online next Wednesday. I'll be active on Twitter. The links are in the description for this video. This recording will be up. And I might actually do 7 PM next week. I might see if I can do a 3-hour stream rather than a 2-hour stream. Although this is now only just over an hour and a half, but I really need to sit down. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening, and everyone enjoy your Christmas holiday if you celebrate, or just enjoy your holiday if you don't celebrate. And I will see you next Wednesday.